Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, while we read his book, Confessions. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, welcome back. Today, St. Augustine has a harsh name for the Manichees, frauds. We will talk about that after our reading, and we are reading from Book 7, Chapter 2, on page 135. As for the Manichees, O Lord, those frauds who deceived both themselves and others, and for all their talk were no better than mutes, because it was not your holy word which spoke from their lips. I could answer them well enough by using the argument which Nebridius used to put forward long ago when we were at Carthage. We had all been deeply impressed when we heard it. He used to ask what the imaginary powers of darkness, which the Manichees always describe as a force in conflict with you, would have done if you had refused to join battle with them. If they answered that this force could have done you some harm, they would in effect be saying that you were subject to hurt and corruption. If, on the other hand, they said that the powers of darkness could not harm you, there would be no purpose in a battle which was supposed to result in some part or member of you, some offshoot of your substance, becoming intermingled with opposing powers whose nature was not of your creation, and being corrupted and degraded to such an extent that its bliss was turned to misery, and it needed your help if it was to be rescued and purged of evil. This offshoot of your substance, they claimed, was man's soul. It had been taken captive, made impure, and corrupted, while the word of God, which was to come to its assistance, was free, pure, and incorrupt. Yet if this was so, the word of God must also have been subject to corruption because it came of one and the same substance as the soul. Therefore, whatever you are, that is, whatever the substance by which you are what you are, if they admitted that you were incorruptible, all their theories were proved to be false and repugnant. If they said you were corruptible, it would be an obvious falsehood, no sooner uttered than rejected in horror. Nebridius's argument was therefore a sufficient answer to the Manichees, and I ought to have disgorged these men like vomit from my overladen system, because if they thought of you and spoke of you like this, they could not extricate themselves without committing a horrible sacrilege of heart and tongue. Before we get started on my main reflection today, I just wanted to remind you, as we're reading through these things and we hear the Manichean beliefs, if you don't understand them and if they're completely confusing, that's okay. You don't need to understand them to get what St. Augustine is talking about in the Confessions. They are confusing. That's why they didn't last. So don't worry if you aren't fully grasping what they believed in. But on with today's reflection. After years and years of arguing with my cradle Catholic husband when we were first married, and being proven wrong again and again, I finally decided to start studying Catholicism for myself. Now, the more I studied, the angrier I became, and the reason was that as a Protestant, I had been kept from so much. I had grown up in school hearing about the ancient Egyptians, and then Jesus was born, and then we had the mighty Roman Empire. It fell. Then the Dark Ages. Nothing to see here. Move along, and ta-da! The printing press, the Enlightenment, and America. Now, I had grown up believing that Catholics were just a small cult, and a big reason why I thought that was because so much history was left out to me. Why? Because America is a predominantly Protestant country, and it's the victor that tells the story. That entire period after the apostles died to basically the Enlightenment was just glossed over. You may have had a sprinkling of the Crusades and maybe a little bit of Constantine over here and, the evil Inquisition. But for the most part, it was glossed over. And why was it glossed over? Well, because it was Catholic. That time in history was Catholic. So imagine my surprise. I was also astounded to learn that the Bible didn't fall from the sky, and that the Protestant Bible was different than the Catholic Bible. And guess who's came first? Well, the Catholic Bible, which really is the only Bible because that's the one that was given to us by the church that Christ founded. And I was very angry because I realized that all this history, all this knowledge had deliberately been kept from me. Now, I don't mean that my parents were trying to deceive me. I don't think they knew either. And one of the ways I know this is because when my mom went with me to the Holy Land, when we went on pilgrimage, when you go to the Holy Land, every major place that Jesus went, every place that Jesus went was major, but like significant places in the Bible, there is a church over it. And for the most part, they're all Catholic. The Holy Sepulchre is a bit different, and the Church of the Nativity, we have the Orthodox and some other groups that kind of co-share it together, but not a Protestant group. There's no Protestant churches to be had on any spot where is a major story from the Bible where Jesus was. So anyway, as we're going around the Holy Land, and we go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and we go to Capernaum, and we go to where the Sermon on the Mount was, all these places have Catholic churches, and they're run by Franciscans. And my mom goes, why are all these churches Catholic? And I was like, oh, man, she was just like me. She doesn't know that the church has been around since Christ ascended. And so obviously it's older than anything that she's ever gone to in the United States. Methodist, Disciples of Christ, the different churches that we went to when I was a kid. It's older than that, but she doesn't know that because so much history has been kept from her. So that's how I was, growing up and into my 20s, and then it was in my 30s that I finally converted, but I had been kept in the dark for a lot of this information. St. Augustine writes, quote, "As for the Manichees, those frauds who deceived both themselves and others, and for all their talk, were no better than mutes, because it was not your holy word which spoke from their lips." Unquote. I totally get how Augustine feels later on down the line about the Manichees, now that he has the truth. I really and truly struggle to feel any charity towards Protestantism. And I don't hate Protestants. Obviously, I don't. Most of my family, they're all Protestant. And I don't think that the majority are bad people trying to deceive. I think major players set the stage to create a smokescreen so that people struggled to find the truth because their agenda was being pushed. And that's very frustrating to me because when you confront Protestants about the half-truths and the mistruths with what they believe in, they will fight you on it, just as I once did, because nobody wants to believe that they have believed something that isn't quite true or not all true. And I know this because I used to feel this way. When my husband would come at me with all this information, I just wanted to block my mind from it because I didn't want to believe that what he was telling me was true. I know that's how a lot of Protestants are. But I do think Protestantism has done massive damage. The fracturing, the confusion it creates, especially for non-Christians. Like, what do y'all believe? You're not even on the same page. This is not helpful nor fruitful. This is not what Jesus intended. And because I feel gypped, or I used to feel gypped, I still struggle to just put up with Protestant arguments. Full disclosure here, it is really hard for me, really hard. But I have to remember that I do want Protestants to come to the fullness of truth in the Catholic Church. And I have to keep at the front of my mind that I won't win anybody over by sneering at them. That was very hard. And as hard as it is, we must find a way to be charitable and help them see the light of truth. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I'll see you back here for Chapter 3. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.